A very warm welcome to all you, our dear viewers. And just in case we have a new viewer on board, we do not take your tuning lightly. Olivia Nakalembe is my name, and welcome aboard to Astute Strategists. And we are definitely giving you transformative information in regard to building your CSOs. Today's conversation is actually one that's very intriguing, and we are talking about resource mobilization. But who to better talk about this particular subject other than the one and only CC? I know for sure some of you might not know the acronym CC. It might be new in your ears, but guess what? I'm here with Mr. Timothy Mugerwa. The first time viewer would definitely want to know, what is your name? What do you do? And why are we here today?
Yeah, thank you, Olivia. I'm happy you already mentioned my name, but I'm okay to repeat the name. My name is Mugerwa Timothy. I work with Astute Strategists as a chief consultant.
Okay.
Yes.
In just a few words, what does Astute Strategists do?
Astute Strategists is a social enterprise, an NGO consultancy company. Basically, we offer professional services to CSOs, social enterprises, and any other related services.
Okay.
Yes.
Each single year, we actually have CSOs and NGOs sprouting up left, right, and center across the entire country. It's not limited. This particular case is not limited to only Uganda. We do have East Africa, the East African bloc, but we also do have the continent Africa. And these are definitely involved in so many facets of life. It could be health, it could be finance, it could be empowering vulnerable communities. We have CSOs and NGOs cropping up, not only here in Uganda, but the East African bloc and on the African continent. But at the core of their operations lies a very interesting topic, that is resource mobilization. And that is the reason as to why we are here today. Mr. Mugerwa would love you to interest us with a definition of what resource mobilization is for someone that has tuned in for the very first time.
Yeah, thank you, Olivia, once again. Resource mobilization can be defined according to your organizational needs. However, there is a standard definition, your understanding of this. So we can simply say resource mobilization are steps or activities undertaken by an organization to secure financial, material, and human resources to advance your goal or organization's objectives. So basically, it's about looking for resources in form of human, financial, and material.
Would love to know still from you the fact that you have mentioned that, or we have actually mentioned that it's at the core, of the operations of any CSO or any NGO out there.
Yes.
Why is it important?
Basically, you cannot run an organization on a zero budget.
Sure.
You can't run an organization without workers. You can't run an organization without equipment.
True.
For any organization to thrive and to ensure that it is effective in its operations, it must have funds, which is money. It must have experienced workers. It must have logistics and what we call infrastructures in terms of office, vehicles, different software, different office equipments. So basically, there's no way you can run an organization without having the three. So, which is why it is important for you to mobilize for those resources in order to achieve your objective.
Shortly before the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation was not different. It's not that it was easier for, CSOs or NGOs to actually go out, and seek these financial resources to run their enterprises. Yes. But when COVID-19 hit, it even became harder, to go out in this pool and get something out in terms of finance. which called for the need to rethink the way CSOs and NGOs actually went out to seek for these resources. Mr. Mgerwa, we have also just held, as Astute Strategists, you've just held, a meetup with many of these CSOs and NGOs to help them rethink the way they sought for these financial resources. And that is where the gist of today's subject is.
Yes.
Why the word rethink? Why that statement, rethinking resource mobilization?
Yes, actually, as you introduced that term, rethinking recalls for innovative, creative ways of how you are doing business. And in Astute, we always use the word revolutionize, to transform, to change completely.
Yeah, sure.
Because when you look at the donor community, it's very, very competitive.
True.
And again, there are donor cuts. There are some donors who are changing priorities. Goals are shifting. Pandemics are also coming in. For you to keep in business, to stay in business, you must change with the trend. So for organizations to thrive in the 21st century, they must rethink the way they do business or the way they mobilize for resources.
Mr. Weir, just hold it right there. There's a time we had a conversation right here, and it's one of my favorite statements that you actually mentioned. Using 20th century
approaches to address challenges of the 21st century.
The 21st century.
Yes.
Does it actually qualify in this particular situation?
Yes, it does, because there are so many organizations that are still using the approaches of the 20th century to address challenges of the 21st century. I don't want to mention names, but you must be knowing one of the oldest indigenous organizations that is addressing HIV/AIDS. That organization would have been an international organization by now. It would be operating across Africa and probably outside Africa. But it is facing stiff competition from foreign organizations that are coming in the country to do the same work
that they are doing.
Okay. That organization, I think, was founded in 1980s or 90s. Okay. So basically, it would be the biggest in Africa in that sector.
After all, they've succeeded at what they are doing.
Yes, I know of another organization in Rakai. I won't mention its name. It was among also the most vibrant organization in that region, and had acquired a lot of partners to do that. But now they cut off the funding and channeled the funds to another organization which is foreign. And now the organization downsized. It cut on its workers.
And it's struggling.
Yes. Okay. So basically, those are the approaches that do not meet the current trend. Okay. And which is why we emphasize the need to rethink resource mobilization in the 21st century for it to remain in market.
And very competitive.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the conversation even gets juicier because there's a whole lineup of issues that we have to interrogate. But just in case you're wondering on how to be a part of this conversation, it is very, very simple. The social media platforms are right there. They could even be running on your screen, the numbers for you to call, and get to find out and probe more about this particular conversation on rethinking resource mobilization for CSOs or even NGOs right here at Astute Strategists is definitely an ongoing conversation. So feel free to hit the inbox, feel free to go there, ask anything you'd love to know, because at the end of the day, your livelihood is definitely dependent on the survival of your CSO. Mr. Mgerwa, right there where you ended is where we should actually continue. It's not very easy to go out there for a CSO or an NGO and get these financial resources, like hassle-free.
Yes.
There's a bit of challenges hidden in there, and would love you to bring these out. What are some of these challenges that CSOs are facing or NGOs are facing, in a bid to mobilize for these resources?
Yes, the challenges can be categorized in different categories. So one, we talked about COVID-19. That's already the challenge.
Yeah, sure.
And so on. So when you look at the donor community, they set strategic goals, maybe for 5 years. and they say this is our priority area. We are going to be funding, I can give an example like malaria or HIV/AIDS. So after 5 years, we are going to review our funding priorities or funding areas. So you find that many organizations don't realize that donors always change their strategic key priorities.
They also rethink.
Yes, and again, they like addressing contemporary challenges. So before COVID-19, there was no any fund called COVID-19 emergency fund.
Yes, actually, come to think of it.
It wasn't there. So when COVID-19 came, donors had to rethink the way they do business with their grantees or with their partners. And instead they allocated so much money or funds to the health sector. You can also use another example of climate change.
Yes.
Before climate change, there were no funds to fund the climate change activities. But when the UN, I think during COP1, they met, then they created that fund. And then funding changed. So there's always a transition. And even before climate change, there was gender. Before you could do projects without putting the gender perspective. Yes, the gender aspect. But now time came and said all programs, all projects must align themselves with gender inclusive. It's very important. So basically, a lot of funds were created to support gender-related activities. Then from gender, we had climate change.
Yes.
And now climate change is very central for all organizations, be it ministries, be it private sector, they are required to put into consideration climate change in all their projects. So you see that the trend keeps changing. And organizations are not changing. However, there are organizations that are changing with the trend, more especially the friend organizations. I'm sure when we are growing up, we all knew that Red Cross responds to disaster issues, relief issues. But as I speak, they're into agriculture, they're into climate change and others. So with them, they know what to do. Ours in Uganda, the domestic or the indigenous organizations are static. They never change. They barely change.
So whereas the donors are actually changing, putting their eyes elsewhere, our organizations are static.
They are static. And also another challenge is African or Ugandan organizations lack capacity to manage projects. They do, which is why donors are cutting their aid and channel it into other organizations which are foreign owned or into government ministries. Others are put into think tanks because organizations are failing to deliver or to manage projects. Another challenge is many organizations make a mistake. When they start an organization, they think of getting money first. They focus on looking for donors instead of focusing on what could attract the donors and keep them. You see, it's one thing to get a donor and it's another thing to keep the donor.
Yes.
But again, donors are like customers in business. Because when you do business, if your focus is just to make money, then your business may not be sustainable.
True.
But if you focus on what could attract and keep the customer, then you can build a sustainable business. The same thing with NGOs. With NGOs, they make a mistake and all they think about donors. But they don't think about the criteria, the requirements of what donors need. So they need to first put their houses in order for them to attract a serious partner to be on their side. So that's one of the biggest challenges, by the way, and which we have noticed in so many CSOs in Uganda. That they only think about where's the next grant, where's the next donor, but do you even qualify? Can you compete with an established organization?
Mr. Mugia, right there. Looks like there's approaches to rethinking resource mobilization.
Yes.
Could you interest us with a few of those? What are some of the approaches that can be tapped into, while the CSO, while an NGO is going about Rethinking
Yes.
Resource Mobilization.
Thank you. I know so many organizations that even are very tired of writing grant proposals.
Okay.
Because that's the only approach they have.
Writing grant proposals.
That's the only approach they
From
have.
January to January.
And they never get a response, or they get rejected.
Okay.
So basically, what do you do in such an environment? And again, is it sustainable? Can you depend on donors for the rest of your 50 years or your strategic
For eternity.
For eternity, because the organization must outlive you.
True.
Definitely, because you can't be there forever. So one of the things that I think we can talk about, for me, one of the best approach, first get professional. You must turn your organization a professional so that you create donor confidence. Donors must have trust, confidence in your organization.
True.
For you to be able to attract them. Is what they call solicited and unsolicited grants. So with solicited, a donor will be in the US or Europe and writes to you.
Okay.
They approach you and they say, write to us, give us a rate of inquiry. And we see what you do. That you are standing bigger chances. Because if it's donors
that are running to you,
that means you have something to offer.
Yes.
But that's because you have the human, organizational, and infrastructure capacity to manage their funds. Because they don't want to give money to an organization that cannot account for funds. They don't want to give money to an organization that cannot report on the project or the progress of their activities. So that's one. Secondly, in such a situation where donors are cutting support from indigenous organizations, we need is what we call domestic mobilization of resources.
Yes.
Domestic mobilization. By the way, many Ugandans are not aware that there are so many potential in Uganda that you can mobilize funds locally.
Domestically, locally, within the country.
Within the country. Government ministries have so many funds. By the way, different ministries. Yes. The Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Water and Environment, the Ministry of Trade. There are so many. However, organizations are not aware of that.
So there's an information gap.
There's an information gap. But again, they fear to go there because of what I just talked earlier. Because remember, when you mobilize locally, they have access to your organization.
Very quickly as compared to someone who's coming from outside the country.
They will come and do a brand audit. And you have nothing to show. So that's why many Ugandans prefer writing proposals to US, because a person will not come to see. So that's when they go to NASA and they do the reports and submit. That's the challenge. So we can consider domestic mobilization. There's also what we call crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is where by you launch like an online fundraiser and you have people donate from different parts of the world. But still you must be having visible work. However, there are some lucky people who don't even have any credible work, but they still get the funding from crowdfunding.
Wow.
So because now there are so many sites.
Isn't that fraud?
It is, but the Ugandan is bagamba tebati danger.
Okay.
So basically, there are so many sites that they can go to. Again, we need to diversify. Diversify, that means that we need to invest in income generating
projects, activities,
yes, so that the project can continue even after the grant expiry period.
That is very,
yes.
Actually a very creative.
So that means you need to empower the beneficiaries or the communities that you are serving so that they can sustain themselves, so that they can be self-reliant. They can be self-reliant. That's very important. But again, there is what we call charity concerts, charity dinners, or others call them fundraising dinners. So basically, when you go to Europe and the other countries, they have like 10 different ways of raising resources for the organization. They don't only look at writing proposals. So in Uganda, I know the culture has not yet so much interest because when you organize a charity concert in Uganda, instead people misuse the money. However, I would highly recommend that if you approach a celebrity, for instance, Jose Chameleon has a very good following and you interest them in your cause, I'm sure they would be happy to support, as long as you are visible on the ground and you're making the difference.
Okay.
So one of the ways is to do charity concerts, and people will definitely contribute the money. I always see in the media like NTV, NBS, and the others, whenever they cover stories, humanitarian stories, whereby they put it, so and so had a place, if you have support, and people are contributing.
Yes, people
do
actually
contribute.
overwhelmingly contribute.
Yes, I have seen people building houses for needed people. That's because they watched the story on TV. Personally, I have also supported some helpless person in the interior. I saw a story on NTV, and there is a woman who was being kicked out of the house. So basically, the funds are available locally, but we need to just tap in to find ways of tapping into that. So, and lastly, on that, one of the approach, I would say, again, we must be creative and must be visible. There are so many good brands that are out there, but they are not visible anywhere. So you are the only person talking about your organization. Who can trust you? You need to be creative and probably get in what we call goodwill ambassadors, get advocates, get somebody else to talk about your organization so that it is out there. So, and whatever you do, document, branding, it must be visible. I always give an example of UNICEF because it inspires me a lot, the way they do their work. So when you visit their social media handles or websites, it's very attractive, you know. You feel like you are intrigued to read more, to learn more. Unlike other organizations in Uganda, which are very boring. Yes, so there are so many ways, but I know we can't finish all those within this interview, but they know where to find the Astute, and I think we can further this discussion.
Surely. So, Mr. Mugera, you have mentioned about 8 approaches. From my count, 8 approaches. You know, in terms of tapping into resource to run CSOs and to run NGOs. You just, should I call it a launch? You had an icebreaker of such an event right here at Astute Strategists not long ago, and would love to know, before I ask the question now, how does Astute Strategists come in? What are some of the things that, you know, were inside that particular event? Because I very well understand it was part and parcel of this conversation.
Yes. So basically, actually, before I answer your question, the last component I had forgotten is about partnerships.
Okay.
Many organizations, you want to go solo, or you want to eat alone.
You want to shine alone.
Like they say in Uganda. So one of the ways to attract support is to create partnerships. You find that there's an area where you're not doing well, and there's somebody who's doing good.
Yes.
So it is important that you create a partnership with that organization or form a coalition. Come together like 2 or 3 organizations and write a strong proposal that will catch the attention of the donor.
True.
It is very easy to trust like a coalition than a single organization. Yes, because accountability issues have always disturbed the organizations in Uganda. So, but if you're more than one and you have the legal requirements to do so, you please form a partnership. There, you put your resources together, your skills together. You can have a bigger impact than trying to do it alone.
Yes, because usually I feel like when you come together, everyone has their stronghold.
Yes.
So if you put your strongholds together, you'll definitely go very far. You'll go miles. Just like the saying, if you want to go very fast, you go alone. But if you want to go very far, numbers definitely
move together.
Do not lie.
Yes. So about the workshop, one of the challenges that we saw, it's still with capacity. Honestly, most organizations in Uganda do not have the capacity to manage resources, to run projects.
Capacity is in definitely a couple of facets, just like you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Maybe if you could specifically give us some of those areas in which they're lacking in terms of
capacity. So the capacity, when you talk about capacity is broad. Capacity, we have human capacity. Human capacity, an organization must have qualified and skilled personnel to manage it. For instance, if I'm to give you support, I expect you to have a project manager who is going to plan the implementation and supervise the project. And again, you do the report, progress reports, monitoring and evaluation, and so forth. I'm just talking about a small organization that don't have much capacity to hire specialized people in every department. So you are expected to have a project officer who is going to manage that particular project, the implementation and handle the technical part. And again, you expected at least to have a field officer. For instance, if you are working with communities, the project officer will not leave the office all the time to be in the field to monitor.
So there's need for someone on ground.
On the ground. That reports to the project officer. And again, if I'm to give you funding, I expect you to have an accountant or a finance person who is going to focus on the money to ensure that you have invoices, quotations, receipts coming, people signing for whatever goes out and whatever comes in. You can be able to write a very good financial report. That is the finance person. And on top of that, above the three, there must be at least with the team leader, executive director, or whoever. At least you must have at least 4 people within the organization, at least if you don't have the budget. That's the human capacity.
Yes.
You must convince me you have the capacity to implement the project that you have applied.
Mobilized for.
Yes. And again, you have the capacity to account for every penny that you've got.
That is going out. That's
going out.
Wow.
At the end of the project, we expect a financial report. At the same time, the project report.
From the monitoring and evaluation.
So, but many organizations cannot do that. Secondly, there's what we call organizational capacity, which is separate, which is different from human capacity.
Resource, yes.
Organizational capacity, the organization must have checks and balance, must have policies, must have tools, so that if my term ends as an ED, somebody else who comes in can take over without.
I think it is one of the biggest problems that when the founder of this particular organization dies, most especially here in this country, it even stretches outside NGOs or CSOs.
Yes, it does.
The organization dies with them.
Yes, so that's like a government ministries or agencies, that if somebody is transferred from one ministry to the other, the new minister will find everything in place to start operating. The same thing should happen in organizations. That the organization must have policies, must have tools, must have reports, everything.
To ensure continuity.
And remember, other than continuity, it is the organizational policies that guide the human resource.
Yes.
While executing their duties. That's how it's supposed to be. So that's the organizational capacity. Then there's what we call infrastructure capacity. Infrastructure capacity is a bit beyond our organization, and now we talk about equipments like computers. Like
that are going to help the human resource.
But the computers cannot help you alone. There's different softwares organizations use in reporting, like in accounting and different organizing meetings, online meetings and stuff. So you must have a human resource that is guided by the organizational policies. But again, who can use the infrastructures that the organization has? So if you are to do a brand audit in Uganda about indigenous organizations, I'm sure you will find very few with all the 3 aspects I have mentioned. And yet donors want you to have all the three with you. You find that foreign organizations have all those. They have all those. And again, on top of the 3 that I've just mentioned, there are some specialized areas where you cannot have full-time employees, like M&E. M&E is both internal and external. Those organizations have capacity to hire consultants to do and make an independent research or study. These small organizations don't have that capacity. So you find that if we write a proposal, it's not just about writing a good proposal, it's about meeting the criteria
of the proposal.
Yes. So you find that if I write a proposal with an organization maybe from Karamoja, definitely I will take the funding because I meet all the criteria and I have all the needs from them.
I think that begs, it actually takes me back to what you just, the last approach that you talked about, partnership. Because
Yes.
just like you've said, there are organizations that have certain things and others do not have, the other things. So it means if we come together, we can ably, successfully get this resource, the financial resource,
Yes.
because we are tapping into each other's abilities.
Yes. So before you think of who is going to fund you, ensure that you've built a credible organization that can manage itself beyond the expected grant.
Wow.
An organization that has human capacity to manage and run projects. An organization that have the organizational capacity to exist separate from its office bearers. An organization that has infrastructure capacity, so that whenever you need, like for instance, you want to monitor field workers or beneficiaries, you can call for a virtual meeting. You can use a Zoom services. You can use meeting diaries.
Meet.
So there are different ways, even in the way you organize a meeting. How do you schedule meetings? How are you going to remind the people that you have a meeting? Are you going to call them? There are different
or
software.
you'll like just send out a reminder,
There are
automated
different softwares now that are being used to do that. And again, in accounting, reporting your finances, which programs are you using? So all these are required.
Mr. Mugera, still back to the event on rethinking resource mobilization that we just had.
Yes.
As Astute Strategists. What are some of the other things that you uncovered about NGOs and CSOs in Uganda in this particular on this particular subject of resource mobilization?
So, other than capacity building, we saw an issue of mistrust and the false reporting from organizations, unfortunately, that many donors are running away because Ugandans are not sincere. Okay. Yes, they keep on giving fake reports because an organization can write a proposal that, for instance, like an orphanage, they're looking after 200 orphans.
Yes.
We want to find out that they're only looking after 5
10
orphans. And again, among those 200, they would say they sponsor them to go to school. They are paying, for instance, maybe $200 USD. We want to find out, say UPE school, they only buy porridge.
And and the kids go for free to school.
So there's that, which is really affecting. And because even it's forcing donors out and creating a bad image or reputation for even those who are credible.
Yes,
because they will just generalize and say, Ugandan CSOs is a no-go zone. Because people do not have trust. They keep on giving fake figures. Okay. Yes. And another thing that we noticed that Ugandans rarely even read the call for proposals. They rarely. All they care is just filling and submitting. Ugandans don't read. I don't know why. Because you find that when there is a call for proposal, it has guidelines on what to expect and the criteria, whether you meet that criteria. But people just fill the proposal without even reading. They just look at the figure. How much? 5,000 USD. They do the budget. You may find that someone does not have a project, for instance, on HIV/AIDS, and the call is on HIV/AIDS. Somebody submits a report. And if the call does not fit in the area the person is applying the funds for, you find that donors have a tendency that when you keep on submitting, for instance, like useless information, they give you another chance. But they put you on a pending. Once you submit the second one, and it's also useless, trashy and blacklist you. They even have a network. Yes, they even communicate among themselves.
No.
So the Uganda want to use that. So don't pay attention.
Don't pay attention.
Don't pay attention. That's what they do. Not pay attention. And
that's quite unfortunate.
Yes. So basically, those are the challenges.
So how do we go about these challenges? You've told us what we are not doing right.
Yes.
As a country, amongst the CSOs and NGOs. So how do we rectify the situation
So
before we go into what Astute Strategists
I think,
actually
like I
put
said
forward?
earlier, you just have to be professional. Be professional at all stages of your project and the organization. You know, the project is different from the organization.
Okay.
You must be very professional at all stages of your project and organization. That is very, very important. There is no way you are going to attract serious partners or even keep them when you are not professional. And as in a professional, that you must address the three capacity areas I talked about: human, organization, and infrastructure. You must be professional at all stages. Again, you must improve on your reporting.
Okay.
African organization rarely reports. You can take some time, go and visit a district and find out how many CBOs are registered there and how many have annual reports. You will be sure that you may not even find any in a particular district. A particular district. And okay, that might be at a low level. Then let's go to the NGO level. Go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the NGO Bureau. Find out how many organizations are registered locally and find out how many have annual reports. You will find out that those with annual reports are foreign owned. You know, there is what people don't know here. Those organizations that identify as Ugandan, they are not actually Ugandan. They have foreigners.
Their bases
behind.
are
Sometimes they don't even have bases, but what foreigners do, they come here as tourists. So then they befriend somebody like you, and they say, I have an idea. Let's register an organization. So when you register an organization, it's their organization, but they are using you
as the face to portray that
those are some of the organizations with those capacities. But organizations that are founded by a typical Ugandan, out of 100, you will find that maybe 10 or 15 may have annual reports.
Mr. Mugari, you've given us a very small number.
That's the reality. Have audited reports. I can assure you, whoever founds an organization in Uganda, their primary and final objective is to get funding. And once they get funding, they don't want to know what comes after that.
No reporting, no capacity building.
They don't want to know after that. Okay. That's why they try to do. So I would emphasize the need to go professional at all stages of your project and your organization, then improve on your report writing. Again, your branding is important. Donors also want to identify themselves with good brands. They need to visibility. Everyone does. So there's no way I can come and give you funding as a donor when you don't even have a website. When your social media is fake. When I say fake, you feel that somebody just uploads pictures which are wanting, poor quality. How do I allow you to use my logo as a donor on such type of quality, on fake pictures? And you rarely even update your social media. It takes you like 6 months to update your social media. And when you look at your logo, the quality, the branding is so poor. So branding, actually, the business community understood the power of branding better than the CSOs. But I implore the CSOs to also use the same.
Tap into that.
Yes, to get some tips from the business people to see how they can brand themselves. I always mention UNICEF and the other organizations like Red Cross. Whenever, I'm sure when Red Cross writes a letter or releases something, even if they don't put their logo, you can tell that this works from Red Cross. You can be able to tell that. That's the power of branding.
Their brand identity is just so out there.
Yes, that's very, very important. And again, like I just said earlier, that you need to get in like a goodwill ambassadors, people who have some credibility. And again, have a body of directors and a functional one. You see, Ugandans have a tendency. They will report that they have a body of directors, when it is their father, mother-in-law, and so forth, who don't even know about the operations of the organization. This body never even sits. The body never sits. So you must have a functional body of directors who can hold you accountable, who can advise you, that management. And again, have the management in place. Because now we have like 3 arms of the, actually like 3 arms of the CSO. We have the beneficiaries, that's like the community. Then we have the management. Management, these are the human resource that we talk about, the human capital. Then we have the body of directors. So these three arms must be communicating together and must be reporting to each other. So the management must be knowing what is happening in the community. And the body must know what is happening within the management. So the management must report and they hold them accountable.
There's a symbiotic relationship kind of.
But in Uganda, like I said, we just have ceremonial things. Even if you find that the management doesn't exist, it is one person, even within the management. You get also the family to sign, and some good friends can say that sign now. Something. So that's Uganda, and this is what we are trying to change. There's no way you can really build a serious organization with that type of mindset and mentality of doing things.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's subject is actually a pertinent one to the survival of NGOs and CSOs, not only in Uganda, not only on the East African bloc, but on the African continent. It is key to survival. Rethinking resource mobilization for CSOs and NGOs will definitely ensure their survival, even after, the departure of the founding members. As we get to conclude this particular conversation, ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to implore you first, follow Astute Strategists on all social media platforms, be it Twitter, even on YouTube, by the way. Yeah, we are very, very present. The inbox is very, very open. Send in your comments, supplements, or even positive criticism. Ask all the questions that you need, because you're dealing, with professionals in this particular space. As we get to sum up this particular conversation with Mr. Mugerwa, the Chief Consultant of Astute Strategists, would love to know. All has been said and done. But the biggest question that remains unanswered for this particular episode is, now how does Astute Strategists come in to solve this impasse?
Thank you for that question. And this is why we are here. Okay. This is why Astute came.
You have some answers for us.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Because we noticed that it's somehow very expensive for emerging organizations, for organizations to hire full-time workers, like at least 4 workers that I just mentioned.
True.
The project officer, the finance officer, and the team leader. So what we do that we can do the very job. There those 3 or 4 people would have done for you.
Okay.
At even a less cost. At a less cost. That's one of the ways. Okay. Astute can save you all that and help you build a credible organization that meets the international standards, or that meets the requirement of partners.
How do you do that?
We do that because here we have a group of consultants that have skills in every field that you need as a CSO. And we do your work. For instance, if you bring here a proposal, definitely we shall write you a winning proposal.
Wow,
if you need assistance in report writing, annual report writing, we definitely do that. If you need assistance in financial reporting, we also do that. So basically, we offer all the services that organizations need. So, but other than that, we also do trainings. Okay. If you have a team of your employees, like you have 3 or 4, we can do capacity building for your organization.
On the trends that are happening, for example, on the topic that we are, dissecting today.
Yes. So we train you, we tailor trainings according to organizational needs. So you might need human resource training. You might need training in police or organizational capacity or infrastructure capacity. Or you might need training on specifically resource mobilization. Yes, maybe I need to emphasize resource mobilization is different from fundraising.
Okay.
Yes,
what is the difference?
Fundraising is strictly on money. Resource mobilization goes beyond money.
Okay.
Yes. it involves the human capital, like I just said, and also materials. It could be in form of vehicles or computers. That's not a financial resource. So that's what resource. It just
components that will enable the running.
Money is just a component
okay.
of resource mobilization. But many focus more on fundraising. So we can do trainings on resource mobilization, or even particularly on fundraising, if you wish. So we can do a whole lot of stuff for your organization. What you just know, we can turn your organization professional. Okay. We can turn it into an organization that can attract serious partners. Okay. We can take you step by step and even go in the field to make a situation analysis to ensure that your beneficiaries or target audience is consistent with your objectives of the organization. So basically, in a nutshell, your Astute Strategists can help you professionalize your organization and build it to the level that you want it to be.
Mr. Mugera, how different are the services that you offer in this particular on this particular subject as compared to elsewhere?
I beg your pardon.
What is that the one different thing that you offer to the CSOs and NGOs, for example, in terms of rethinking resource mobilization that we have not seen elsewhere?
So basically, the difference between us and the others is that we make a lot of research before we come to your organization. And we know the global trends. All of us are experts in our field, and we are well exposed to new funding shifts, to new strategies and approaches. So basically, we first make a brand audit, what we call a brand audit in CSOs or in organizations. We make an assessment and see at what level your organization is and where your needs are. We do the needs assessment. Then we can recommend the best service that you need. And we recommend a service that is consistent with the objectives, and with that we are 100% sure will align with the global needs or trends. So basically, that's what we do. And again, we need to just remind the people that we have a service we call credentialing of projects. This service, we offer it to donors. So donors approach us with recommendations of which organizations to partner with. And again, we do background checks for organization for donors, because if you write a proposal to a donor, donors don't know you, and they have nowhere to go to find out about this information. So they approach us to do a private study in the organization to find out whether what you wrote or reported
aligns.
Yes. Then we make our own report. So basically, before we come to you, we already know what donors want anyway. We know what donors want. So we are the right people to guide, to train you, and write you a winning proposal, but also advise you on what you're supposed to do. And you look beyond resource mobilization. You look beyond getting grants so that you build a well-structured, well-governed, a well-managed organization that is accountable to the donors, that is accountable to the government, that is accountable to the beneficiaries.
That was quite mind-blowing. It's very interesting, actually, every time I come around Astute Strategists for such insightful conversations with the one and only chief consultant right here. That is Mr. Timothy Mugera. So, ladies and gentlemen, in case your CSO, in case your NGO has been struggling, you now have the answers right at your fingertips. And the gates or the doors right here at Astute Strategists are very, very open for you to come and get assistance any minute of the day. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Don't forget to leave us a comment, to follow us on all the social media platforms. The name is Astute Strategists, and you'll definitely get the much desired answers to ensure the success of your CSO and NGO. The topic today has been quite interesting and intriguing, and it has been about rethinking resource mobilization. Why rethinking? Because priorities from, the donor pool have changed, and so does your organization. So you definitely need to be upfront with all the trends, that are around, the CSO and NGO community. It's only and only then that your organization will even live beyond you, the founding member. Olivia Nakalembe is my name. The conversations right here at Astute Strategists definitely continue. For now, it's a bye from me and the entire crew right here at Astute Strategists. Be blessed.